Hello, and a very warm welcome to today's Explainer. I am so incredibly glad you're joining me today. We are going to enjoy a very funny, very interesting poem called A Concrete Example by the poet Reginald Arkell. We're going to take our time, go nice and slow, and really understand what makes this poem so special.
Tell me, have you ever seen a garden that looks, well, strange or unusual? Maybe a garden with just far too many stones, or perhaps one where the plants are so incredibly small you cannot even see them. Just keep that picture in your mind for a moment, because we are going to find out exactly what happens in this poem.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our quick plan for today's lesson. First, a very strange garden. Second, the invisible plants. Third, standing on the flower. Fourth, summary and themes. And finally, a quick interactive quiz.
Let's begin with part 1, A Very Strange Garden, introducing Mrs. Jones. The poet writes, "My next-door neighbor, Mrs. Jones, has got a garden full of stones, a crazy path, a lily pond." Now, I want you to just imagine that for a second. Is that a normal garden, or is it something quite different? You see, a normal garden usually has lots of bright flowers and soft, lovely greenery, right? But Mrs. Jones's garden, it is completely full of hard stones. It has a crazy path, a pond, and a sundial. Everything feels just a bit unusual, doesn't it? Ask yourself, would you like to have a garden like this? It is certainly unique. Now, let's move to part 2, the invisible plants, planted with a pin. Normally, you would expect big, beautiful bushes in a garden, right? Well, the poet tells us that the plants Mrs. Jones grows are so incredibly tiny that they seem completely meaningless. They are microscopic. In fact, he jokes that she must be planting them with a tiny little pin. It's the absolute absurdity of planting a whole garden with a pin that creates the wonderful humor here. So why do you think the poet is joking here about the pin and the tiny plants? Is it A, to criticize and be mean to Mrs. Jones, or is it B, to simply create humor? Think about it for a second. The correct answer is B, to create humor. The poet is not angry, and he is certainly not trying to be mean. He is simply amused. He is gently making fun of the situation and trying to make us all smile. Bringing us to part 3, standing on the flower. This is the absolute funniest part. Let us walk through the exact steps of what happens. Step 1. Mrs. Jones proudly invites the poet into her garden to see a very special prized flower. Step 2, they literally stand there and talk about this flower for 15 whole minutes. And step 3, the poet is completely confused. He is looking all around and he cannot even see the flower they are talking about. Finally, the poet gives up and asks where it is. And what does Mrs. Jones say? She says, "You're standing on it." Oh my goodness, he was stepping right on her prized flower. It was so tiny, and there were so many stones everywhere that he didn't even notice it was right under his foot. Now that is just wonderful comedic timing. Let's look at part 4, summary and themes. What does this poem actually teach us? To summarize very simply, the poem describes a strange garden filled with stones and very tiny plants. It features humorous commentary by our easily amused poet. The main event is when the smallest flower is accidentally stepped on, which gives the entire poem a very lighthearted and funny tone. Now, pay close attention here, because let us look at an important literary word, irony. Irony is when something treated as incredibly important is actually too small to even notice. Mrs. Jones treats this tiny flower as her absolute biggest prize, talking about it for 15 minutes. But ironically, it is so small the poet simply crushes it without even knowing. And this leads us to the main themes. First, finding humor in everyday life, sometimes right in your neighbor's garden. Second, different perspectives of beauty. Mrs. Jones finds beauty in tiny plants and stones, while the poet is just completely confused by them. This brilliantly illustrates that people simply have very different tastes in life. And you know what? That is perfectly okay. All right, part 5. A quick, interactive quiz to test your knowledge. Here is your first question. What is unusual about Mrs. Jones's garden? Think back to the very beginning of the poem. What was it completely full of? Great. Now for the second question. Why is the situation with the flowers so funny? What did the poet accidentally do? Excellent. And now for our final multiple choice question. What tone does the poem have? Is it A, serious, or is it B, humorous? Call out your answer.
The correct answer is B, humorous. Great job following along today. You really paid excellent attention to the details of the poem.
As we finish our explainer today, I want to leave you with one final thought. Do you think beauty should always be perfectly visible to everyone, or can beauty be hidden, just like Mrs. Jones's tiny flower? Remember, sometimes the smallest things create the biggest humor, and the most hidden things hold the most beauty. Thank you so much for joining me for this lesson. I will see you in the next one.